What's up everybody, we're back in BFA with another Stankie video, and today we're taking a look at the new season Affix Infested. So I'll be going over what it is, how it works, and how we deal with it, along with my thoughts on Infested. So what is Infested? Infested is a seasonal affix, meaning that it will only be up for a limited time and it will later be replaced by another affix. It will only show up on keys that are plus 10 or above, just like Tyrannical or Fortified used to do back in Legion, so any key plus 10 or higher will be infested, so to speak. And as the name suggests, it infests certain mobs in a dungeon. And what this means is simply some mobs will be infested by a spawn of Gehun or a symbiote of Gehun. They're pretty easy to spot due to being greyish and, well, they vomit grey stuff all over the place. And they have a debuff which tells you that they've been infested. So what does this symbiote of Gehun do? Well, any mob that's close to an infested mob will get their health back. They will heal for 10% of their maximum HP every 3 seconds. And if you kill a mob that's been infested by Gehun, 2 little worms will spawn, which in turn will try and infest new mobs. So as soon as the 2 worms spawn, they will instantly seek out some new targets to infest, and once they've reached the target, they will do an uninterruptible cast. Once that's finished, well, the mob will now be a symbiote of Gehun. Meaning, if you don't pay attention, you can end up with a whole swarm of infested mobs, which is, well, it's not ideal, to say the least. And if you have even 2 infested mobs up at the same time, it is extremely hard to be able to kill even one of them. Not impossible, but yeah, you want to avoid that. And pretty much any and all non-boss mobs can be infested. Even critters can be infested. I mean, Gehun doesn't judge. It'll infest whatever. However, the mobs that are infested with Symbiote of Gehun are handpicked by Blizzard, but there will be a multiple set of possibilities, so it's not completely random, but also not the same every week or every dungeon. Meaning you'll have to change your strategy every week depending on which mobs are infested, and this essentially means that you have to be on your toes. A certain route might work well one day and not at all the next. But enough about that. How do we deal with it? How do we deal with infested? There's generally 2 different ways to deal with infested mobs, and that's either focusing the infested mob or CCing it. And depending on dungeon and affixes, you'll most likely have to switch around a bit. There's no one size fits all here. Sometimes crowd control won't work and focusing the infested mob is the only way to go. However, due to the nature of infested, you can't just pull it with the other mobs and AoE them down, because, well, it will heal everything around it. So instead you focus the infested mob and only the infested mob to burn it down as soon as possible. When the 2 Gehun worms spawn, you want to make sure they don't infest any other mobs. As I said before, they are not interruptible, but you can use things like stuns, roots, grips, etc. And the worms have fairly low HP, around 60-65k and a plus 10 at least. So the easiest way to deal with them is simply AoE stun them as soon as they spawn and nuking them down. If done correctly, they should die within a few seconds. And if that's not working out for you and you have a DK, he could grip out the infested mob before it dies, giving you a little bit of more space and time to kill off the worms. You could stun the infested mobs and move the other pack away. But when I did it, it worked just fine, just rooting or stunning the worms as soon as they spawned, even if they were in the middle of a pack. However, if time is not an issue and the infested mob can be crowd controlled, or if there's more than one infested mob in a pack, then the easiest approach, or at least the safest, is to simply crowd control the mob using sheep or in caps or what have you. After you CC the mob, you pull the mobs near it and nuke him down before you engage the actual infested mob. But when you do kill the infested mob, make sure that you slow or stun the little worms so they don't run off anyways and infest something else further along the way. They are pretty fast when they want to. And due to the random-ish nature of Infested, you want to be open to the possibilities of changing your normal routes during the dungeon. Your normal route might be riddled with infested mobs and an alternate route might have a lot fewer. Of course, there's only so many routes to take, but keep an open mind, play around with your routes a bit. And as I said, this all depends on dungeons, how high the key is, what type of mobs and affixes you need to deal with. If, for example, you have Sanguine affix, you want to make sure that the spawn of Gehun won't run through any sanguine, or get stunned or rooted in sanguine. And during bolstering, you want to approach infested mobs with crowd control more often, especially if the 2 Gehun worms bolsters the other mobs. And if you do CC an infested mob, make sure to pull the surrounding mobs more than 30 yards away from it so you don't bolster the actual infested mob. And let's all look forward to teaming, because it will most likely be a living nightmare with Infested. So yeah, looking forward to that. There's also a new affix, which as far as I know has only been data mined, meaning it's not 100% confirmed, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's called Relentless. And what it does is non-boss enemies are granted temporary immunity to loss of control effects, meaning stuns and CCs and stuff like that. And this can have a big impact on how you deal with Infested, depending on how it actually works. Will it randomly cycle at all times on all mobs, or will it only work on mobs that are actually in combat? Either way, it will make crowd controlling an infested mob a lot harder. So to recap, deal with infested mobs either by CCing them and taking care of the rest of the pack before engaging, or pull in with a pack and focus them down, the latter being a lot faster but a lot riskier. And if you plan to focus them down and not crowd controlling them, I suggest having coordinated stuns or incaps for when they do spawn. Moving on, a few thoughts on this affix. When I did my first 10 on live, we went in with the mindset that this was going to be really hard, so we took our time, planned every pull, and quickly noticed that it doesn't pose much of a threat at all if we just paid a bit of attention. And we switched between crowd controlling or just killing the mobs down as we saw fit, but in a standard 10 it wasn't too big of a deal, time consuming but not too bad. The hardest part of doing a 10 wasn't Infested, it was just the overall dungeon and the Sanguine plus Necrotic in Freehold. Well, it's not my all-time favorite combo, I tell you that much. Personally, right now at least, I kinda like the affix. It keeps the dungeon fresh, or at least fresher, due to the random nature of it, and I really like to come up with strategies on the go. Sure, planning ahead is really nice, but it's a lot of fun for me at least having to come up with new approaches to a new problem. It's one of the reasons I love raid leading. I might have a completely different feeling about Infested in a couple of weeks, but as of right now, I'm looking forward to tackling more infested dungeons. And that's pretty much it for this video. I hope it helped you out and I hope you get to try it soon. Kill some Gehun worms for me. If you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. And as always, hit that subscribe button, leave me a like and ring that notification bell and switch it to all. Thanks for watching and I will see you next time.